Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined today by John Paul Mason. And there's an alarm going off already behind you. So no doubt in 45 minutes we'll hear the police siren. Right, here we go. It's Thursday already. These weeks come round thick and fast. Going to start off because you've not had a chance to talk about Motherwell and us overcoming them. So give us your thoughts on that first of all, JP, before we look ahead to the weekend and everything else in the world of Celtic.
Well, probably need to start by thanking my knight in shining armour, Mr. Ronnie Darroch. We never even spoke about the podcast. So I don't even know if he watches, so it might be going to nowhere. But if anybody knows him, please pass this on. I was sitting in the flat trying to get a cab about 1 o'clock to go and meet my mate in Denniston for a pint, a rare pint before a game. You know, just sort of get to chat. Yeah, just chat about stuff and do real life stuff. And yeah, I started trying to get a cab about 1 o'clock, and it was just mission impossible. I don't know what was going on last Saturday in Glasgow other than the Celtic game, but it was really hard to get a cab. They were really expensive as well, and it just kept, suggesting, "Oh, you want to spend a bit more? You want to spend a bit more? You'll get it." And like, I'm not spending 25 quid to get to Denniston. And then I gave up the ghost pretty much about the time that the team came out, so about 1:45. And I was like, right, I'm now in a struggle to get to the game, never mind get a pint. So I leave my flat, and as soon as I leave my flat, the heavens opened. And I'm not even kidding. It was just like, this is like some sort of, I felt like I was in After Hours, the Scorsese film, if you've ever seen that. And I took one step down Queen Margaret Drive. I was about to put my headphones in, and the next thing I heard the guy going, "You going to the game, mate?" And I looked down, and my Celtic top must have just been sticking out my jumper because I didn't have my scarf on yet. And I turned around and I was like, "Aye." And he went, "Jump in." So I jumped in to a Rolls Royce.
Seriously?
I'm not even kidding. Like, I swear on everything.
Wait a minute though, right? Did anybody see you travelling in that kind of prawn sandwich brigade style?
Well,
that's dangerous, mate. That is dangerous.
I was somewhat undercover, but yeah, just had a really nice conversation with the guy, Ronnie. He was a really nice guy, and we were trading Celtic stories from throughout the years. And he had a space in the car park at Celtic Park, so I pretty much got dropped at the door. Quite ridiculous, really.
That's amazing. That is incredible. I love that. I absolutely talk about travelling in style.
And also, just to make it even more surreal, I've had this. My dad's dad used to own a car battery manufacturer in Manchester and Bradford, and I've had that that statue since I was a wee boy, and it says on it, R. Rushworth Yard, 1932 to 1942. So that's how old that is. So yeah, thanks again to Ronnie for the lift, and I have to say, from that moment of that random act of kindness, I kind of had a good feeling that we would get the result. And I texted Ronnie afterwards to say I had that feeling, So even when we went 1-0 down, I was like, nah, this isn't Motherwell's day. This is our day.
I had that feeling, JP, right? And the guy behind you on the front cover of his autobiography is the reason for it. When Motherwell took the lead, and we'd been hearing all about Motherwell all week. And by the way, this is on merit. This is on merit that we've been hearing all about Motherwell. They've had a fantastic season, breath of fresh air. We're looking at the manager, I hope. I think that we've got to. I think it would be remiss of those at the top of the tree at Celtic not to look at Motherwell's manager after the job he's done, right? Whether or not he gets it's another thing. Whether or not it's too early for him, we can have that chat. But we go into that, and even at a goal down, I felt the exact same, JP, but for different reasons. Not because I travelled to the game in a Rolls Royce, but because we've got a Rolls Royce of a manager. Is that what we'd call him? Or is he a Bentley? I'm not sure. I thought the vehicular comparisons were going to end. But the reason for this was Martin O'Neill for me, JP, right? So let's start off with the goal then, because that takes us into a discussion point about two guys that I think we need to discuss anyway, Sinisalo and Rio, right? So we'll start off with Sinisalo, and that opens up the Kasper Schmeichel conversation. I was reading this morning, Chris Sutton, someone I've got immense respect for, both as a player and as a pundit now, has called the acts of Kasper Schmeichel selfish. Where are you in this debate? Where are you in this discussion?
I was thinking about that because I knew you were going to ask me. I would say that if you go back to when he gets the injury, when was that game? The Ireland the Denmark game where he got injured? Was it March time or April
I'll
time?
check just while you're talking there. I'll check exactly what it was because we'll be able to gauge it from Sinisalo's appearance,
So
obviously last season.
you could look at it through two lenses, really, and one would be that you've got to admire him for wanting to play through the pain barrier. Because I mean, the World Cup was the following year; it wasn't last year. It wasn't like he was playing to get into the World Cup in the summer. So you could look at it and say, well, you admire him for wanting to play through the pain barrier for Celtic, to do his best for Celtic, because who's to say that Sinisalo didn't come in last season and make mistakes or whatever. I know he didn't, because obviously he came in and acquitted himself well. Schmeichel comes back for the cup final. That's not Schmeichel's decision. That's the manager's decision. I would say. You can put your hand up and say you're fit, but ultimately, if the manager doesn't think you're right, then you probably shouldn't be playing. So, as much as I laud Brendan Rodgers and respect Brendan Rodgers, that's a strange decision which Brendan Rodgers would have to answer on why that happened and why he was given the gloves in that game, because that's the game that everyone goes back to sort of say that's when Schmeichel started letting the team down, because he throws in a goal that otherwise you would have expected him to deal with comfortably. So that's that lens. And then the other lens is you could look at it and be like, well, he was injured. He should have accepted his injury and, stayed on the sidelines and let Sinisalo come in and see what he could do. Coming into this season, that's when the argument starts to blur a bit, I suppose, because you're like, well, why wasn't the keeper situation looked at in the summer? But then we didn't look at any situation really well in the summer. So that's on the club, I would say. Schmeichel's the number one keeper, getting paid handsomely to be so. Saying he's fit, the manager's picking him. The decision's kind of taken out of his hands, I think. I don't know. It's a very strange situation. I did watch that whole interview and it was pretty uncomfortable because you could see he was smiling, but there was definitely a kind of real sadness behind the smile, because he was kind of acceptance of the reality of his situation is that he's probably kicked his last ball in the game. And to end it like that, you only need to look at the way that Joe Hart's career ended and the sort of, he went out on his own terms and, maybe, comparing the two against each other. We all thought that Joe Hart was maybe a bit premature in his retirement, but maybe it was the right thing for him at that point in time to end his career on his terms. And now you look at Schmeichel, it's out of his hands. So,
well, in respect to everything you've said there, JP, it's difficult to argue. Here's my take on it. So he gets injured, and just as you mentioned there, I had a look at Sinisalo coming back into the side. So he comes back in on the 29th of March to play against Hearts, and we win that game 3-0 at home, right? So that's Sinisalo back in the team. So it would have been that midweek that Schmeichel's injured his shoulder against Portugal. And the biggest issue, if you'll remember, and Peter Schmeichel did raise this, is the fact that they had used all their subs. They couldn't take Peter Schmeichel off, and he played on with an injury, and he did obviously damage it further by making saves, etc. Right, so he's out the team. So the first discussion point, and we had it at the time, we had it in the live when it was topical, right, is should he come back in? And that was the big discussion point that we had leading up to, mainly with one eye on the Scottish Cup final, right? Does he come back in for that? And that for me was the biggest decision, and it has to be made in consultation not only with the player, but alongside the medical team, Stevie Woods, the goalkeeper coach, and of course the management team. I'm going to go back to a point in Celtic's history that you'll remember, and it was a season that I think we both fell in love with Celtic. Celtic was omnipresent, but it was a centenary year. And I remember the team coming out for the cup final, and Alan McKnight was in goals. Remember the surprise that Alan McKnight was in goals?
I cannot claim at 8 years old to be cognizant of the keeper change at that point in time. But obviously, as the years ticked by, I would look back and be like, why did that random guy start and go for Celtic that nobody knew? Because it wasn't Pat Bonner, So.
Well, this is a thing, and he was talismanic at that time. You remember the Euro '88 tournament. You remember a couple of years later on, World Cup '90. Pat Bonner was in his pomp. Now, by the way, what I find interesting is there's a lot of people who didn't rate Pat Bonner. You look at what he achieved both for club and country, the amount of appearances and trophies that he won for Celtic, and I think it's a difficult discussion to have. We'll have it. It will rage on in the comments now that I brought him up. Some people just didn't think he was great. But at that time, I think between 88 and 90 was his peak. Right now, he was unavailable, therefore he didn't play. He didn't play, and Alan McKnight came in. We won the game, and the rest, as they say, is history. And we can talk about it in the sun-drenched Hampden pitch and all the rest of it. And it's just margins and it's moments and decisions like that that can make or break your career or your success or your failure. And I think we got it wrong, and we said it at the time. Now, since then, I thought, right, Sinisalo should have stayed in goals. If he had done, and again, this is just speculation, I reckon we win the game. Because you look at the moments in the game, rubbish game, absolutely rotten, but we were winning that game with 8 minutes to go, and then it's an OG by Schmeichel, right? Then he fails to save a single penalty. Now, if you rewind to the League Cup final that we beat Rangers in on penalties, Kasper Schmeichel owned it. See, if you were to go back to that cup final, it was brought up the other day. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he goes, remember Schmeichel in that cup final? He absolutely owned the penalty shootout. He didn't own the Aberdeen one, and he didn't own the Kairat one, right? So I think there's a joint responsibility for that error, first and foremost. The reoccurrence of the injury, JP, I've got a different take on that. So I think, right, we could sit here and go, what if? He might have saved a penalty against Kairat. Sinisalo might have saved the shot that Schmeichel puts into his own net, and we've got a treble last season and we're in Champions League. Brendan Rodgers is still the manager, and we're having a completely different discussion. And that's the margins of football, right? But we'll never know. But I think that was a joint responsibility up to that point. But the reoccurrence of the injury against Stuttgart, I've got a different view on that. So if you injure yourself during a game, by all accounts, when Kieran Tierney is ready to come off the park, he rolls his socks down, according to Peter Grant, and the team take him off. And he's managing his minutes and he's managing his muscles and all the rest of it, right? Brilliant. You've got to do it. And the issue I've got with the fact that Schmeichel didn't do that is multifaceted. Firstly, we've got an able deputy on the bench, and he's proven that he's an able deputy since he's come on. But Schmeichel's worked with that goalkeeper for a year and a half, and he knows what he's capable of, JP. So see if he's injured, Kasper Schmeichel at that point should be saying, look, I can't continue. So in terms of that one fixture, the Stuttgart fixture, I think it's the first goal that he's injured himself in, right? Is that clarified?
Yeah.
Right. So let's say he's replaced and Sinisalo prevents one of the 4 goals. That return leg that you travel to Germany to watch is a completely different beast, particularly when Luke McCowan scores in the first minute. Right, because that takes it to 3-2, right?
And also, I watched the Stuttgart Porto game last week, by the way, and the Midtjylland Forest game. And when Porto were 2-0 up, I was like, oh, this is done and dusted. And then Stuttgart get a goal back and bizarrely got a second ruled out, which to this day, I've not did a deep dive into it, but to find out why that goal was disallowed, because it was a bit bemusing. Even the commentators couldn't really give you it was an infringement. That's all they said, but they didn't point out what the infringement was. So they've had 3 goals disallowed at home in the Europa League in back-to-back games by VAR. 2 against us, 1 against Porto. The one against Porto was obviously a crucial one, because to go over there with 2 each. But I was watching that game just thinking, we should be in this game. This should be Martin O'Neill should be getting this opportunity to play Porto. Do you know what I mean? There was a side script written there for another storyline, which I feel a bit annoyed that we didn't get to experience. And yeah, like you say, that game doesn't finish. I think, if you're being honest, that first leg against Stuttgart, I didn't feel it was 4-1. I mean, I don't know if that might be green tinted specs, but I felt it was, fair enough. Stuttgart probably deserved to win, like Bayern Munich deserved to win at home last season, and they only beat us 2-1. And that 2-1 gave us that kind of, gave them the jeopardy of the second leg, which obviously led to us nearly knocking them out. And I would argue that the sides of Stuttgart and Celtic are a lot closer to each other than Bayern Munich and Celtic are. So therefore, you're thinking we go over there with maybe only 1 or 2 goals to claw back, then it's a different story. And that is the frustrating thing. Like you say, you put your hand up, whether it was... I don't think that Kasper Schmeichel in the middle of that game is thinking, I need to stay on, otherwise I'm not going to go to the World Cup. You know, there's probably a whole heap of emotions, one of which was probably, I want to keep playing to help the side. You know, you can't discount
this is it. Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
discount that as being a thing, because if you're just going straight to, oh, he's selfish, he's thinking about number one, pardon the pun, you know, it could have been that, you know, he actually does care about Celtic and wanted to help the team. And there'll be other players, outfield players, that have probably played through injury as well to try and help the team. And there'll be many stories, you could probably tell me a few of them, from people that you've spoken to in events or podcasts or whatever, that have told you, yeah, I played on with a broken shoulder, or I played on with a dislocated jaw, or you know, you know, I felt my calf, but you know, I ran through it because, you know, I wanted to keep playing.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the ones I always go back to is Bobby Murdoch's ankle. Bobby Murdoch was injured in Lisbon. He was injured during that entire game. And if you watch the 90 minutes, you would never know. The guy was world class, but he was injured. He was carrying an ankle injury. But in relation to, though, JP, that's my take on it, right? And I think you raise a really good point there. He's been booed. Kevin Graham spoke about this yesterday, and I've got to thank Kevin, John, and particularly Patrick for hosting yesterday. It was a bit of a last-minute thing for me, where I wasn't fit. I failed a late fitness test, and there's a scene in The Wolf of Wall Street when Leonardo DiCaprio's taking the Quaaludes, and he tries to drive to his mate's house. Had I appeared yesterday, it would have been a similar thing, because I had emergency dental treatment yesterday morning just before the show. So there would have been drooling. There would not have been much sense being made. And I do vaguely remember speaking to a few people in the comments. Apologies if I upset anybody. I can't barely remember doing that. So there you go. Thank you, Patrick. Absolutely tremendous. And we're fighting fit now. But the Sinisalo / Schmeichel debate now is, you're right, there's a number of different things. You can see he's been selfish because he's got this World Cup thing in his mind. And I thought that Kevin actually described it really well yesterday, because he said that Celtic were a vehicle for him getting to World Cup. If you're going to take it from the selfish perspective, then you're probably right. You're probably right. It could be Celtic, it could be Leicester, it could be Anderlecht, whatever club he's with, where he's been capped 120 odd times for Denmark. And obviously that's massive to him and his dad. The thing for me, though, is it's questionable as to whether or not you would come through that game. It might have been closer against Stuttgart. My biggest frustration is the Hibs game that followed. So in the heat of the moment, JP, as a professional and as a winner, because he is a winner, Schmeichel, you could maybe forgive him for saying, you should have told us and we would have taken you off. He shouldn't have started the Hibs game. That for me, seriously, I'm looking at that thinking, wow. Right, so if we're talking about shared responsibility, about getting him back in for the Scottish Cup final, playing games against Kairat, playing on against Stuttgart with a reoccurrence injury, the one thing for sure that you cannot argue with is that he should not have started against Hibs. Now, again, I'm going to refer to Kev, because he mentioned this yesterday. He says, oh, he wasn't to blame for any of the goals. He was flat-footed for the winner. Absolutely flat-footed for the winner against Hibs. Teaming down the rain, down to 10 men, I get all that. But was he the Kasper, the peak Kasper? Of course he wasn't. He's playing an injury.
But then you've got to, I'm sorry, but players don't pick themselves. You've got to point the finger at the management team, Stevie Woods. You know, these people aren't, you know, blind to what they're seeing. They're obviously seeing him in training. And how do you dress up the fact that you're carrying a pretty serious injury that ultimately is going to lead to how many operations? 2 operations, a 10 to 12 month period being out. You know, surely that's not something you can mask. So whilst people will point the blame at him, there also has to be blame pointed at the people that put him in the goals, because Stevie Woods is an experienced goalkeeping coach, and there was an opportunity there with an obvious injury cited to be able to say, right, we're putting Sinisalo in, and that would have been it. Whether or not we win that game, I have no idea. Like we don't know. Just the same as we don't know about the cup final, just the same as we don't know about Kairat. However, hearing Liam Scales' comments would lead you to believe that maybe there would have been a bit more confidence in the defence if Sinisalo had played, because surely the team are going to be aware of Schmeichel's injury. Like, is he just not going to say anything about it? Yeah, there you go.
Well, they'll know because of the training regime as well. You know, how often is he training? The other dynamic of this, and again, you can't argue with this, and we've been weak as a football club. And it's not, listen, I was having a chat yesterday and people talking about having digs at football club and all this nonsense, right? See, when we're talking about Celtic here, JP, I think what you've got to lay down first of all is how the media landscape is set right here and now. And you can separate, although this will not be the case in the future, you can separate it into three categories. You've got mainstream media, club media, fan media. Mainstream media are agenda-driven, clickbait-driven, speculative, the whole thing, sensationalist, right? That's what they are. They've got agendas. And in Scotland, in the Scottish football, their agenda has been, for a number of years, anti-Celtic. There has been that sentiment. Right. Club media, what's that? It's propaganda. They're never going to criticise a club. You listen to the commentary for a live game, they will never criticise a selection, a performance, because it's club media, it's propaganda. Nothing controversial, right? Fan media, what do you get there? No agenda. And also opinions, right? So I think as football fans, if you're in the boozer like you almost did, but you ended up being in a Rolls Royce, or if you're in a supporters bus travelling to a game, within that collective group, you are having conversations about Celtic, about music, about life, politics, film, and everything else, and you're disagreeing and you're offering your opinions. That's healthy. You challenge the club. The club has also always been challenged by the fan base. From the days of Not the View and the fanzine movement, which led to a street movement, which led to Save Our Celts, to Celts for Change, to the takeover, Celtic fans have always challenged the hierarchy at Celtic Football Club, and that's healthy, and that's a healthy debate. I'm not taking an opportunity to have a dig at Celtic or the PR team. I'm just laying it out here for us to find out as fans, right, season ticket holders, stakeholders, on some random TV channel that our goalkeeper is basically retiring and we're not going to have him for the fight for a double between now and the end of the season is scandalous. It's shambolic. It's amateur hour. Who's to blame for that? I mean, that shouldn't happen, JP. That should be an official club channel and an official announcement.
There should have been, with a bit of sentiment and a bit of kind of heart, there would have been, again, pardon the pun, there would have been like a one-to-one interview. You know, Kasper Schmeichel drops the news, like to, even if it was to Jerry McCulloch or whoever, you know, like a sit-down interview where...
Joe did it. Joe did it. Yeah.
I know, but that seems to have gone out the window this season. But again, just when you mentioned fan media, they're avoiding. Is any of the mainstream media going to ask at a press conference difficult questions as to why Kasper Schmeichel wasn't taken off against Stuttgart or was played against Hibs? Are they going to ask those questions to Martin O'Neill? Probably not. They should. We would, or somebody from a Celtic State of Mind would, or from another fan media outlet. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be shy in asking the vast tougher questions than that. So that's obviously interesting that the fan media ban's in place, or not ban, but just the cessation of fan media. Excuse me, rather than
I'm calling it a ban. Well, I mean, even though we've not been told.
Yeah,
we've not been told that. And by the way, that's like over 3 months now.
Yeah,
which is poor. I mean, that's poor PR, poor communications, poor media, the whole thing, poor.
You mentioned Not the View there. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe Miller on Sunday night in Tuts. He was in for
great guy.
That band over my shoulder, Cardinals, Irish band, great band, and he was in to see them. And this is Not the View, Joe Miller, not our
the average Joe Miller.
Aye, average Joe Miller. Did he coin himself that to distinguish himself from
Super Joe? Aye.
Yeah. No, but it was great. I was talking to him about your interview with those guys, and just saying, I showed him the pictures of my first copy from '89.
Was it 13 or 14? Issue 14.
14. So I think I blew his mind a bit by showing him because he said he forgot. They forgot half the stuff that they put in. And they would also have, like you said, and then they said in the interview, they would have sessions in the pub, and they would forget what the ideas they'd come up with for the.
But even then, they would say and print things and then get a hard time for doing so. But by the way, you brought this up, and it was a nice segue. Even I didn't plan it. I planned to speak about this on Monday, I think it was. But talking of which, there's an issue there. Don't know if you still bought it in the early 2000s.
Got a few of them, yeah.
Yeah. So this is issue 115, and often what I'll do, I'm in my bedroom if the rumours are true, and I've got Celtic bed sheets, and on a shelf in that said bedroom, I've got fanzines, programmes, all the usual stuff for reference. And I'll often pick up a Not the View from any era and just read through it. And it's interesting, JP. It really is interesting, because you think to yourself, oh, how much things have changed, or have they? So this was the thing that I brought up. This was 2003. You'll not be able to read this. You might want to.
I can actually, weirdly, I can see it, and I didn't realise. I never knew about the, explaining the Emerson move not happening. I remember us being linked with Emerson from Middlesbrough. Would have been from Middlesbrough, maybe.
Yeah, and we were perennially linked with James McFadden.
But I didn't know about the short, sharp response. I'd rather not discuss that at this time. So he actually explained why Emerson didn't happen, because of agent moving the goalposts, as it says there. But McFadden, he just said, I'd rather not, a short, sharp response, I'd rather not discuss that at this time. So that could, James McFadden might be his John McGinn,
I know. And there's loads of others, obviously. I mean, it's sometimes, I remember on one of the occasions that we did an audience with Martin O'Neill, and I asked him about all those guys, Rivaldo and De La Pena and Danny and all these guys that had either been on trial or asked to come on trial, and he couldn't even remember De La Pena. Couldn't remember him. So
he was actually at Celtic Park, was he not?
He actually played 2 games. He played 2 bounce games, one against Livingston and one against Dundee. And there's images out of there of him in the hoop. He looks brilliant.
Did he have a nickname, something like Little Buddha or something?
Little Buddha, yeah. He did. And that game, the bounce games that we played against Dundee and Livingston were the last games of football Danny ever played for a senior club. Wow. He basically just went home and never played again. And he was a wonder kid, played with Ajax and Sporting Lisbon.
Must have been the weather.
West Ham. Absolutely. The reason I brought this up is I'm going to get rid of the banner. It's interesting when you pick these things up. Like almost all Celtic supporters, the Celtic Trust looks at Seville and thinks, in the immortal words of the great Van Morrison, of only if we could be like this every year or every day. But the thing that really interested me is this, right? So we come to the point at the end. They have chosen to consolidate, possibly in part to protect the financial investment of major investors like Dermot Desmond. This was 23 years ago. The supporters are disenchanted, not because they want the board to be imprudent, they don't, but because they are affronted by the conservative ambition of those who lead our great club. Celtic is about glory, not profit. That was 23 years ago. 23 years ago.
So basically they're referencing Seville like we're referencing the Bayern Munich tie.
Yeah, and how we've not kicked on. Basically. So I find these things absolutely fascinating, and I'll say it before and I'll say it again. In my view, nobody did fan content creation better than Not the View. They are the pinnacle. They're the best. They will always be the best. And I hope that as a fanzine, it continues forevermore. But I do find these things interesting, how, this isn't a new phenomenon that we're sitting here talking about being unhappy or disenchanted with those running the football club. Not the View, and obviously those at the AGM that it references there, had the same view 23 years ago, JP.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sent me that and I read it, and it was... it's quite eerie to read those words, because they're so foreshadowing, isn't it? It's just like, here's what we are thinking right now. And I didn't think about the whole comparison to Bayern Munich versus Seville. I mean, obviously getting to a Europa League final is a far bigger achievement, or a UEFA Cup final as it was then, is a far bigger achievement than simply getting to the knockout round of the Champions League. But for us at that time last season, it did feel massive. It did feel like a kind of great leap forward from where we'd been sort of treading water in terms of European football for so long. We were like, finally, we can swing and we can hit. We're not missing here. Like that was I wouldn't say you're swinging and you're missing by narrowly getting beat off Bayern Munich in the Champions. Look at Bayern Munich this season. They're racing ahead in the Bundesliga. They're hammering. Did they not hammer Atalanta last night?
Did you see that goal that Kane scored this week?
No.
Unbelievable.
Aye. I mean,
just like off the scale. Unbelievable.
I mean, it's a bit. It feels a bit kind of. People will be bored of it, but you think back and think what that would have done if we'd have knocked them out. Like that would have been so big for the club in terms of making a mark in Europe again. But it wasn't to be. Speaking of foreshadowing, by the way, today is the anniversary of the day that I first saw Celtic win a trophy.
Coca-Cola Cup?
CIS Insurance Cup.
Right.
There you go. For listeners, I'm holding up the programme from the 19th of March.
Oh, yeah.
Year 2000. I flew back from the south of France to go to that game. First time I'd been on a plane on my own as well, which is, for anyone that knows me, is a big deal because I absolutely hate flying, but I put myself through it to get back to Scotland for that. And first time I saw Celtic win. And I've not got my ticket, which is annoying. That must have perished, but I do have this. It's a Beechwood Tavern.
Who was playing? Who was live? Can you remember?
What do you mean? Oh, in the
boozer.
I think that was just to get access to the pub. I don't think there was anybody playing.
No.
There might have been, but God, I don't remember that. I was definitely 3 sheets to the wind that weekend, the whole weekend. But speaking of foreshadowing, I was just flicking through the programme there, and there's a full page advert. They must have known that we would eventually reclaim the song.
My word.
Tina Turner live at Hampden Park.
Oh,
Friday.
my word.
John Fogerty is the support.
26 years ago.
Aye.
Fantastic. No, listen, I love reminiscing, obviously. Vida Reset, Tommy Johnson, am I right? That's the two goal scorers on that particular day. And Kenny Dalglish, the manager, although when you watch the game back, it looks like Tommy Bunce is basically the top man in the dugout when you watch that one back. Here's some comments coming up, and then, of course, what we'll do is move on to this weekend coming up, and plenty to look forward to. Afternoon to you, Terry Boy, and all the Rebels, apparently, PJ and JP. Brilliant. McMahon, YouTube 3 adverts killing the opening. McMahon, I actually seen this coming up on other channels. I don't know what YouTube have done. We've not changed our settings in any way, shape or form, but leave that with me, because if that's something that's kicking in and annoying people, we'll obviously do something about it. But it's maybe just defaulted to something, and I will have a look at that. Pat Dolan, hail from Cape Verde.
Way.
Cape Verde, no problem. Is Patrick there?
That's what I was going to say.
Is that where all the highfalutin Celtic fans go? In a Rolls Royce. Paddy Lavery, always great to see you, my friend. Afternoon to you. And John Mullane as well. We have morning from a not so full of heat Lisbon. Finally made the pilgrimage. Amazing place, standing on the shoulders of giants. There could be, see the wee guy that lets you in. You could write a book, eh? There could be a documentary on that. I mean, is there a more visited stadium by a fan base outside their own region as the Estadio Nacional? Seriously, is there such a pilgrimage? I mean, just about every Celtic fan you speak to now, it's almost like, have you done it? Have you been? You better go before they redevelop it and all this,
I couldn't even tell you where Man United won it the year after, you know that. I don't know where Man United won it in 68.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe it is a kind of a one-off place, but it's somewhere that you just hope. I know they're talking about renovating or whatever, but yeah, it's kind of, you want it to stay the same, just for the nostalgia and for future generations to be able to go back and make, as long as it stays there in some form. Like, you would never want it to completely go, because it doesn't really feel used. Like when I went to it in 2018, it didn't feel like it was. There'd been a game there the day before, but it didn't. It felt like a kind of museum. Like, that's what it was like to me walking around it. Maybe you see it alive on a match day with fans there, and you've got a different perspective of it. But walking around, it was like walking around a live museum. In terms of like just going into the toilets, and they're all exactly the same. you know, on the terrace and you know, the tunnel and everything else. It feels completely untouched from the time. So yeah, an amazing place. So I'm sure he's having a great time in the heat of Lisbon.
When you go up the tunnel, of course, you'll be thinking of the Celtic song chanted out by Bertie Auld, and just everything about that day, you know, that is now etched in the memory. One afternoon in Lisbon, as it was once called. Not the View Christmas. I was trying to find a picture, John Allen. Not the View Christmas posters were great too. My story about Not the View Christmas posters is the following. Can you remember the big caricature of the team group? And it came out at Christmas time, and it was Roy Aitken holding aloft the Scottish Cup, and it was all the team around about him. And I always remember that, and I thought it was absolutely stunning. And until this morning, I could have done that and grabbed it and shown you on the screen, but it's a wee bit further away. Anyway, when I did the interview with Joe Miller, Andy Murdoch, and Jerry Dunbar recently on the channel, go and check it out. Jerry said to me, you know, the guy that did that went on to become a famous artist in like Hollywood movies and stuff. And I was like, really? Who is it? Oh, I can't remember his name. So anyway, I got home, as you do, JP, and I had a look at that poster, and there was a little signature, and it was Vincent P. Dayan. And I thought, all right, but if you actually type that into Google, you will find an artist called Frank Quitely, who went on to be a hugely renowned artist for Marvel and DC, right? So he is the go-to guy for Batman and what these guys. It's unbelievable, right? It's like an item of his artwork now goes for 5 figures, yet he started off drawing for Not the View. And then when I told the story before, I got a brilliant email from an Acsom listener who I actually met at the fanzine a couple of weeks ago. And he says, oh, you know, he did all these old magazines as well, the Glasgow version of the Viz. I think I've maybe run this past you, JP. So his friend, big shout out to you again, Kevin, is he sent me all the magazines, and I sent him in return one of the Not the View posters. But it was incredible that this artist, who had started off designing T-shirts for the Barras, remember the Bart Simpson T-shirt where he's hosing on the Rangers badge? That was Frank Quitely before he was famous that did that. And also the Not the View poster. Unbelievable talent in the world of Celtic. Thanks for bringing that up, John. We've also got Stephen McGonigal saying Not the View. He embarrassed the hoops. Brilliant. On that note, let's talk about Michel-Ange Balikwisha, right? And in relation to this, JP, we are in a situation at the moment where imagine you could unwrap 3 talented players with international recognition who've maybe cost a few quid or are valued at millions of pounds, and you could bring them into the team to make a difference between now and the end of the season as we're going for a double. Balikwisha's one of the guys, yet you wouldn't even consider him on the bench. He was photographed at the weekend back in Antwerp on the park. Now, Brendan Rodgers, we have since discovered, was adamant that he was to be pursued. He was adamant that Balikwisha was to be signed. He was absolutely a Brendan Rodgers player, and he wanted to bring him to the football club. And his cost us over 5 million quid. We're now at a point, right, in the spirit of the embarrass the hoops, we're now at a point where I'm looking at him alongside the likes of Raphael Schmeichel, Albion Ayeti, and Vasilis Barkas in terms of a £5 million investment with nothing back. Now, there's been other players that you could argue were up there in terms of wastes of money. But for me, he's currently in that category. And now we have him as a non-contributing player. And he's actually alongside, in terms of non-contributing players, Adamu and Mvuka. So you imagine those 3 guys, right, and what they have come from in their football careers and their path and their international recognition, 2 out of 3 of them in any case, and the fact that they're not contributing to this fight for a double, JP. I mean, listen, it happens, right? But it seems to happen far too often for Celtic, doesn't it?
Kev's only fools and horses analogy of Mvuka yesterday was top tier. Did you remember that, or were you out of it in your
I don't know. There's somebody here talking about porridge and Guinness. That's the kind of level of my chat yesterday, right? So no, I can't really remember. You'll need to refresh my memory.
Well, it was a Wiedersehen Pet and Minder and whatnot on Monday, wasn't it? And then yesterday it was Only Fools and Horses. He was talking about the episode where they go on holiday and Rodney ends up in I forget the name of the club, but it's quite clear that he shouldn't be doing what he's doing, and Vuka, quite clearly looks like he shouldn't be at Celtic. And yeah, Balak Wisha as well. It's just like, how frustrating is it that we've got a player that we spent over £5 million for? He's fit, and we need everything that we can get in this title run, and yet we can't look to him to help us out. I mean, that is a damning indictment on, if it is indeed a Brendan Rodgers signing, it's a damning indictment on and him thinking that he was an answer to our questions in the summer. It was all very last minute. We'd been linked with him for so long, but then it took us to the last hours of the transfer window to actually get him in alongside Tinekti, and you've spent the guts of 12 million on two players. And yes, Tinekti's contributed, probably not as much as the fans or he would have liked, but Balak Wisha's done next to, one assist.
See, I think on paper, and as Brian Clough quite rightly said, football's not played on paper, but on paper you look at Balak Wisha and you think, right, here's a forward, he's going to cost you £5 million, right? He's 24-year-old, so like in terms of profile, just ticking all these boxes, JP. He's an international footballer with all this experience. Royal Antwerp don't want to sell him, he's a fan's favourite. You're thinking, right, okay, could he assist us up top? Because up top is where we really are struggling, right? You're then looking at, I've even mentioned Kelechi Iheanacho. I'm not quite sure what the situation is with him. Joe Mvuka, 23 years of age, hitting all the profile, all the metrics, JP, of data analysis and all this kind of stuff. When you're looking at the profile of a player, he's come through the Bodo Glimt system at, between 2021 and 2023, and he got a big move which didn't quite work out, but he can come in and he's a forward. And you're looking at him, you're thinking, all right, he looks all right. Same with Junior Adamu. Yet none of them are contributing. And I often look at this situation and think, see, once it's done, I remember a footballer telling me that it's like being on a really steep hill in a car with a handbrake on and just trying to find the biting point without going back. It's so difficult to get going again. Mm-hmm. Do you think do we just need to write these guys off at this stage? Are we in that situation where it's like, right, we need to basically just say, right, these are the 14, 15 players we can trust. Everybody else aren't going to be part of this?
The evidence at this point does. Remember Martin O'Neill said on his way out the first time round this season, he specifically referenced Michel-Ange Balak Wisha and said, the new manager might come in and he suddenly starts getting game time, and not necessarily saying that he was a poor player or whatever. But it's hard to see that happening in the summer and then us starting a game at the start of next season, whether it's a Champions League qualifier or otherwise. Would you be really relying on Michel-Ange Balak Wisha to start for Celtic in a Champions League qualifier to get us into the Champions League if we get there, of course, to the qualifiers? That is a potential scenario if it isn't ripped up, and thanks for your efforts. But
is that where we are with players, JP? Because listen, I'm not comparing his situation with Kuhn, but Kuhn was a stark reminder of not
Yang's a stark reminder. Yeah. I sat on here and absolutely filleted Yang and said, I don't want to hear the announcer say, and I can remember it in my head, I said, I don't want to hear the announcer saying number 13 Yang again, because I was just so done with him, and so were a lot of people. But I fell into the trap of, going on record and going on here, and I've preached, to always sort of give players a chance. I was always very defensive of Liam Scales in the early part when Rodgers sort of gave him a chance and was putting his trust in him and everything else. I was like, well, if Brendan Rodgers is trusting this guy to start for Celtic over guys that have cost £4 million, like Nawrocki or even Lagerbielke or whatever, he was 2.5, 3 million or whatever. Scales was, Buttons from Shamrock Rovers, or I think it was Shamrock Rovers we got him from, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you do get a bit wary about sort of, being that kind of public critic of a player, and Yang was one that and Yang scores those 2 goals at the weekend, and I have to step back and go, do you know what? Whatever's happened, whoever's coached you, whoever spoke to you, whatever you've found within yourself, you've ran and worked yourself into being a good player for Celtic. Whether he's the future on that either wing, I don't know. But the Balikwisha thing, when you see the level of vitriol that gets directed at him, I do kind of wince a bit, because you're like, well, there's got to be a player in there. Like, it would be amazing if we had to call upon him in a game between now and the end of the season and he actually did something. He actually scored a goal or whatever. Like, it's not to say that can't happen, but it's looking highly unlikely at this point.
It is looking unlikely, JP. It's just that you're looking at Martin O'Neill and it's like, right, we're in a situation now where back in the day, I'm going to be interviewing somebody on Friday tomorrow for This Is Acsom, and it's Danny Craney. And the season that he burst onto the scene, if you like, we were desperate. We had like 2 leg breaks in the first team, Frank McGarvey and Charlie Nicholas. We needed a striker. And instead of going out and trying to buy somebody, because back then you could just basically buy it any time during the season, we pull somebody out of the reserve team. Now, we just can't do that anymore. So we're in a situation where you're sometimes looking up top, JP, and thinking, right, we need a right winger or we need a striker. And you're looking at Iheanacho and Adamu and Vuka and Balikwisha, and you're thinking, right, all these guys aren't even options. Why is that? It's so frustrating, and it must really be frustrating for Martin O'Neill. I would, like yourself, I'd love to see one of the guys being a hero. I'd love to see one of them becoming a hero in a big game, in a big moment between now and the end of the season.
One each comes off the bench, goes on a easy run and bangs into the top corner. The place would go absolutely bananas.
Yeah, I know.
And the guy would the margins are so tight now that Balikwisha could score 1 goal for us that wins us a game and make himself an absolute hero off the back of a season where he's done, up until this point, 1 assist. But like, we are looking around the club for heroes. You asked me last week who should start against Motherwell. I thought Schmeichel should have started. He didn't. And then he comes on, scores a penalty in a high pressure situation, whether you like it or not. And as he was lining up to take it, I was like, well, he scored into the Copeland Road at Ibrox to win a penalty shootout there. Then this should be a walk in the park to him. And he casually slotted it in and got us the lead in the game, and then does really well for the 3rd goal, which I think everybody round about me was going, we need a third. We can't hang on to this at 2-1. They're capable, even with 10 men, of putting a move together that can get them a goal. So, I mean, as much as, I had obviously criticism of Fanchara, and I was speaking to my mate Scott, and Saturday night I was out in the Vogue in Rutherglen. Scott McCorry was out with him on Saturday. We had a few sherbets, and I kind of manifested the Hearts loss, if I'm being honest. I was like, if I go there to that pub and I watch it with him, I think they'll get beat. I should have backed Kilmarnock. I definitely should have looked at the price. But he was saying he didn't think that Chvanchara was hungry enough. He didn't look hungry for a goal. He just doesn't have that kind of, like cadet-y, like he'd push his granny out the way to get a goal. Do you know what I mean? That kind of vibe. And I can kind of get what he's saying, but at the same time, like I said, the margins are so tight now that contributions from these players could be small, but in the scheme of what we're in right now, and it's a title race, is that they could be massive. Like even if he scores another 2 or 3 goals, those 2 or 3 goals could prove to be absolutely vital. You're coming. Kev's saying, you want an Ida impact, and everybody would love an Ida impact. But we might not get 8, 9, 10 goals out of him, but if we get 3, 4, 5 in the next 8 games, those goals could prove to be big, just the same as they could be big coming from Adamu, or less likely Mvuka.
Couple of things from that. We're now looking at a collection of players. You spoke about Chvanchara, and I agree with you. He's the guy I'd pick out of the 4, even though I think Iheanacho's the best striker at them all, right? And I know they're not all centre forwards, but if you're looking at Mvuka, Adamu, Chvanchara, Iheanacho, and Balikwisha as 5 guys that you're thinking, right, we brought you to this football club to win trophies for us. Go and do something, right? Chvanchara is the guy that's playing, no doubt about it. of the other 5, do we have a Jean, Joel, Pierre, Doumbé amongst them? I don't know. I would love to think that one of them can come and make that kind of impact. But if I'm looking at that Ida impact that Kevin mentioned yesterday, the one player from that bunch who's going to score a double against Motherwell or Hibs or score against Rangers in the final, it's Fanchara, even though Rangers are in the final. It's Fanchara who I think is capable of doing that or having that kind of an impact. The rest of them, I'm not quite sure. And in terms of the 5 players I just mentioned, it would not surprise me if all 5 of them were no longer at Celtic next season. Now, we're looking at this weekend, and this is what we're going to be doing every single week now. And it's all about, and I asked earlier on this week, who's going to be the next to blink? So you're looking at every fixture, JP, of Hearts, Rangers and Celtic, of course, and you're saying, right, get our job done. And then you're thinking, like you say, I'm manifested that Hearts defeat myself, and I watched the game. And what I've noticed, and one thing I've mentioned time and time again, is it comes down to the managers. And I'm looking at McInnes. And you'll remember back to the game at Tynecastle where Trusty got sent off, and I still don't think it was a red card personally. And we'll look back on that. And McInnes lost his rag on the sideline with Fozzie. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
He lost his rag. And then after the Hibs game, and he was giving it big licks to the Hibs fans. Then after the Aberdeen game, and he's barging into players, he's rattled, JP. Derek McInnes is rattled. And now we're all becoming body language experts. Now he's trying to be cool in press conferences and all the rest of it and play everything down. He is absolutely rattled. The other guy, Danny Roll, I think that he's completely out of his depth. I really think that, and it's coming across as cockiness, whereby he's trying to be laid back and all the rest of it. He's cockiness. And then for me, the guy that's cool and has shown composure and a touch of class is Martin O'Neill. And I do believe that it will come down to that, because the team is a reflection of the manager. And if the team reflects each of the 3 managers I've just mentioned, we'll be cool enough to get this over the line. Do you agree with that?
I agree with what you're saying with regards to, you look at the behaviour of the managers, and then you think to yourself, how has that been reflected in the dressing room, and what are the players picking up on and whatnot? I mean, there's got to be a reason why Hearts didn't play well on Saturday night, and it wasn't because Kilmarnock are, the second coming of Real Madrid. It was because Hearts weren't good. I watched the game. Hearts weren't good. Their fans said they weren't good, and that Kilmarnock not only deserved a goal, but deserved the win. So this is a Kilmarnock side that, we took a bit of hard work to beat a few weeks ago, but it's also a Kilmarnock side that were absolutely dismantled. Who beat them about 5-1?
Dundee? Was it Dundee?
Aye. Mm. And Neil McCann wasn't looking too clever at that
Falkirk.
point. Oh, was it Falkirk?
Yeah.
It was. So yeah, I mean the Hearts thing, the Rangers thing, the managers, it's absolutely something you've got to take into account. And Martin O'Neill, I sometimes just can't believe that this is all happening. Like you see his wee celebration to himself after the 3rd goal, walking back to the dugout, and you're like, I can't believe in 2026 we have Martin O'Neill in the dugout. I thought the atmosphere was really good on Saturday as well. There was a bit of a togetherness, although I still maintain that it's an open goal for both sides to have the Green Brigade back in. Now it seems to be we've moved past the kind of question mark stage, and it's kind of like, right, well, it's there for us, and in much the same way as I was saying, referencing a player that could come and do something for us in a game, the Green Brigade coming back and reigniting the support as a whole, and really kicking it off, that could be massive in a game as well. What if we're 1-0 down to somebody in a game and we really need everybody to properly go for it, and you've got the Green Brigade there to kick that into action? Obviously you want the support to do it organically, and there was an element of that on Saturday, but why rely on possible organic singing or chanting when you've got people that are going there where their whole modus operandi is to do it? And watched the first episode of that Ultras programme the other night, and it was interesting to just see behind the camera of other supports ultras like the Partick Thistle ultras, and just how passionate they are about Partick Thistle, and people would maybe like scoff at that or whatever, but it's kind of cool to see, you know, how they have like kind of, you know, developed a kind of, you know, a decent amount of folk that go along to support Partick Thistle and organise tifos and everything else. So they ask a wee boy who's like a Spartan / Hibs fan, he's like 8 years old, goes to the game with his mum, and they ask him who the best ultras are, and he was like Celtic or Rangers, you know. And then you're just like comparing what we do at that level in terms of the tifos compared to, no disrespect to the lower league teams who are doing these tifos and whatnot, but the impact that can have can't be understated, I don't think. You know, and you've got a manager in Martin O'Neill who is probably craving that the atmosphere that he knows at Celtic Park, that he's known for his whole life. I'm craving it. I spoke to the guy in Stuttgart, like I told you last week, and I was kind of embarrassed telling him that, you know, that isn't a true what you saw on that night isn't a true reflection, and it's because we've been hamstrung by our board,
our leaders. The thing with that, right? I've seen a lot of stuff online about the ultras. Is it a 2-parter that's on the BBC? I've not watched it. Is it a 3-parter? I've not watched it. I've said on here before, and I'm not going to bore anybody, I did a bit of research into the ultra movement, obviously over in Germany, and how it started to trickle over into Scotland mainly. And I've got my view on it, and I do think that there's been blurred lines between what an ultra is and what an ultra movement is versus hooliganism and that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that's the case with the Green Brigade, but we did see it in full view at Ibrox with the Union Bears. I mean, face coverings, entering the park for violence, attacking staff and players, and firing pyro into the crowd and all that kind of stuff. That isn't what the ultra movement was all about. That's not the roots of the ultra movement. Now, in relation to this, what I would say, JP, one thing I am aware of is the backlash to that particular 3-parter in respect to the ultras, and in particular one individual, right? And this is something I think you need to call out. And there's no point in calling it out on Twitter, because it's a cesspit, and people then just move their pile on for this to that, and you can't have a proper conversation. And I think the best thing to do is, within the confines of Acsom, where we've got a community, you can speak about it here. There's an individual called Blair McNally who's a vlogger, right? And I think he's a Partick Thistle fan, right?
He's the guy. He's in that TV show.
He's in it, right? And he has got nothing but abuse since it was aired. Horrific abuse, like the worst pile-on you can imagine. That level of abuse. And basically, I look at that and think, this is absolutely unacceptable. It's abhorrent that anybody should have that level of abuse for living the dream of being a full-time vlogger. Now, I met Blair a few years ago down in Manchester at one of the award ceremonies. Lovely guy. He was with his mum. Lovely fella. Young kid, football daft, wants to create a channel, does it, builds it up, is able to do it full-time. And there's a jealousy and an envy attached to this kind of pile-on, JP. This is a human being with emotions, and we're always hearing, JP, about mental health matters and all this kind of stuff. Think twice about having a dig. It's easy to pile on somebody. It's easy to quote.
I wasn't aware.
It's horrific what I've seen, what I've witnessed, right? Absolutely horrific. I've spoke to Blair a few times. I've met him at the game a couple of times. Just let him do his thing, man. Just let him do his thing. You know, it's like we're in a scenario now, JP, where people think that that's a victimless thing to do, to pile on and bully and harass somebody like that. It's completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable.
That's a sad state of affairs. Is it just as a result of the documentary? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, you imagine, right? Setting up your own wee channel, building up, get a wee bit of notoriety, having a presence on the socials, and then the BBC come along and say, we want you to be part of the documentary. Well done, mate. Have we lost the art of saying, well done, you've worked hard?
Sadly,
fair play.
Probably yes.
It's horrendous.
That's the society and the climate that we're in now, where, like you say, everybody hides behind a pseudonym online, and you know, sometimes it's grown men who've got children of their own that decide to say absolutely ridiculous, snide things online, and then just send it, press return, and then just retreat back, and maybe don't even engage after that. They just drop that one comment or whatever, and then that one comment, as you well know, if there's a negative comment about you or I on this, that one negative comment tends to stick with you more than the 20 or 30 positive ones that you get, and that's I guess people will just say, oh, just ignore it, just keep doing what you do and all the rest of it. And I guess that's what you have to do, because it's
absolutely.
If people are watching this and they like it, then that's great. If that makes a difference to someone's day, great. Like why would that be something that you would get a bee in your bonnet about?
I've said in the past, JP, Ricky Gervais talks about it as well, really well, better than me. But people have been objectified if they appear on social media or on a show like this, whereby it doesn't matter what they say to JP Mason, because he's just that guy on the screen. They don't treat you like a human being, so they can criticise you and say anything at all that they want to say to you. But the level of toxicity I've seen in relation to Blair is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And I think it needs to stop. I don't think there's enough measures online to stop it, quite frankly, but it needs to stop. And fair play to Blair for what he's done and the fact that he actually made it. He's doing something creative.
The numbers he was talking about on the show that he gets, because he was talking about, he was showing like he's showing whoever was interviewing him on the documentary, like some of his videos, and he was sort of saying, who wants to see ultras at like a lower league side in Scotland, and then it turns out quite a lot of people do, because he's able to point to the figures, and you're like, that's really incredible numbers to get for the content that you're showing. He's showing sort of how the ultra thing has kind of influenced teams and created a community amongst clubs in far-flung places in Scotland that I've never been to. I mean, I'm desperate to do the full stadiums in Scotland one day. Hopefully, I will. I mean, it's a big ask, but he's going to sort of the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh tier of Scottish football and finding these pockets of ultras and then making videos about them and then turning the spotlight on them, and then that might make another couple of guys in the area be like, oh, I want to do that, and then that brings them out of their bedroom where they're sitting playing computer games and not doing anything, and as long as they're not breaking any laws or being violent, then it's kind of cool that exists.
Yeah, and there's a new generation of football fans who are looking for something a wee bit different, JP. And I think that, again, that can't be lost on the ultra movement, because they might be the reason why people, like you say, want to go to the football and be part of a different type of a community. We won't stop today. We won't finish up today without your thoughts on this weekend. So obviously, the two fixtures that Rangers or Hearts are playing will come before Celtic face Dundee United on Sunday. So we will know the outcome of Rangers versus Aberdeen, which is a 5:45 Saturday night kickoff, and Hearts versus Dundee, which is a 3:00 traditional Saturday afternoon kickoff. Now, you were kind of hoping and willing Kilmarnock to take something off Hearts. I kind of believe that they would as well. I think I predicted a draw, maybe a 2-2 draw I predicted last week. We got even better than that. Can you see Dundee or Aberdeen taking anything from our title rivals before we line up to face Dundee United, JP?
Oh, it's interesting that both teams played each other that are involved in the games against Celtic and Hearts this weekend, because obviously last weekend I looked at the score at one point and United were 2-0 up. And you're thinking, oh, that's quite a shock, because Dundee have been playing well, going well under Stephen Presley. Stephen Presley, who I happen to see. So, side note, tomorrow is 33 years since I first saw Celtic play a Rangers team in that strip. 2-1 Celtic, Payton and Collins, Mark Hateley for Rangers. And I watched a bit of it this morning on YouTube, and it cuts to the bench and you see Ali McCoy's putting on his tammy, and in the background's a very, very young Stephen Presley on the bench. And they also talked about the transfer fees and about how much Celtic paid for Andy Payton. Do you know how much Celtic paid for Andy? You all know this probably, because
was it not 650?
Not far off. It said 600,000. But then it also showed you Mark Hateley. Rangers paid £1 million for Mark Haley in 1990.
I know.
1990, like, that's insane.
Did they sign him from Monaco or AC Milan?
Monaco, I think
Monaco,
it was.
right.
But yeah, it was just it's a fond memory, and seeing John Collins dancing down the wing against him, and then having spoken to him like a few weeks ago in touch, it's just like, wow, I can't believe I've actually met that guy a couple of times. It's kind of mind blowing, because I was 13 at that point, and that was a huge deal to see Celtic not only play Rangers but beat them, because I'd kind of really endured misery in the Celtic Rangers games up until that point. But anyway, sorry to digress. Stephen
No, but by the way, can I jump in very quickly? That jersey is probably, other than commemorative tops, probably going to be the only Celtic jersey ever, or the final, Celtic jersey without a sponsor.
Yeah.
We'll probably never see the untarnished hoops again. That was one season we lost People's Fort. Yeah. And for one season we had no sponsor, and we go back to C.R. Smith after that.
Which I didn't. When I went to buy that, I paid like, I don't know, something like 120 quid for that. Obviously ridiculous, but it means a lot to me, and to get it, I had it when I was a wee guy, and then obviously my mum probably gave it to somebody or whatever, and then to have it back is pretty cool. But yeah, Presley going to Hearts, that's an interesting side story. Albert Kidd, also an interesting side story. So what will be on Saturday. I would imagine surely Hearts aren't going to really drop points at home, but you never know. Rangers against Aberdeen, Stephen Robinson's gone in there, so they had the benefit of playing a managerless St Mirren on Sunday and scraping a 1-0 win. I watched that as well, by the way. That was a hard watch. So they had the benefit of that, but they've now got the possible misfortune of playing a Stephen Robinson's Aberdeen team after he's had a week on the grass with them to maybe instill some of his ideas and bring a bit of confidence to them. Who knows what will happen there? And then us on Sunday, yeah, you look at Dundee United, you could criticise them for losing the 2 goals late on to Dundee, but then they were 2-0 up as well. You've got to remember that. So they obviously carry a threat. They beat us already at Tannadice. I'd like to think that we could go there and use that as a bit of fuel to go and get a result. I'm not going to be there on Sunday. I'm working a show, which Joe Miller is going to, actually. He's going to go to the game and then go to the gig that I'm working, which is a girl called Jenny Beth from Savages.
Oh, Primal Scream.
No.
Did she not do the solo album with Bobby Gillespie?
Oh, yeah, you're right. She did. Yeah. So there's like 15, 20 tickets left for that on Sunday. And
Great voice.
I need to start at like 3:30, so I'll get to watch the game, but I'll not be able to go, unfortunately. But yeah, I would hope, like I said, that we can use that as fuel. That defeat should never have happened that night. We should have beaten them comfortably.
That was a horrible night, wasn't it?
It wasn't quite as bad as Motherwell at Fir Park, because Motherwell at Fir Park properly did a number on us that night, and that could have been any score they wanted. Dundee United, it just seemed to be, we didn't take our many chances. Johnny Kenny could have had a hat-trick. And
yeah. You know what, I think, I went back to that game. I think Johnny Kenny should have scored 4 goals that night.
Yeah.
There was 3 in the first half.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Would you have let a striker that had scored a hat-trick in a game like that go out on loan in January if he had scored that?
Probably not.
You would think not, right?
Probably not.
That might have been the actual sliding doors moment in his Celtic career.
Nancy's.
And Nancy's. He said in a recent interview that he still harbours ambition to be a striker for Celtic, but I mean, the odds don't look good for him at this moment in time. I would hope that we are in the summer going to go. I mean, we got linked with Kasper Højgård as well this morning again. I don't know if that's just nonsense, but I would hope that we're going to go out and actually buy a striker. I know that seems like an abstract thought or idea for much of our support, given that we've not seen us do it now for 2 years. But yeah, and so you see Shin Yamada didn't even get a game in a 5 or 6-0 drubbing at home. I think it may have been away, but he didn't even get a look in. So we were so a second division Bundesliga team isn't bringing him on when they're getting horsed looking for goals, and he was supposed to be the answer for us. Come on.
Scary, JP. Listen, it's going to be an interesting weekend as always. Always brilliant having a chat with JP once a week. We could go on and on and on. We're 10 minutes over time. Big shout out to everybody continuing to support the channel. I shared on the socials recently, we have now hit the first Celtic fan channel ever to hit 28 million views on YouTube. So thank you all for tuning in every single day, 2,000 strong.
I remember, if anyone knows any good sites to get programmes, I looked up the programme for that Celtic Rangers game because I don't have it from '93. So if you know any good programme sites, I would love to pick that programme up because it's a really cool cover. It's got like an old school kind of, I think they used it for all the whole games that season. It's got like an old school kind of 50s.
I know it. It's like a painting, isn't it?
Yeah, you know
Celtic player. Yeah.
With like the brown boots.
Aye.
And the socks quite low, and maybe like the old leather football was like on it as well.
Oh yeah. There's a couple of really good Facebook groups, mate, that deal in programs, and all you need to do is just say, "Look, I'm looking for this one," and someone out there will have it, 100%. I know I don't have it. I was actually going through my programs this morning because I'm a saddle in my Celtic bedroom and my Celtic bed sheets. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks every single one of you for getting involved. If you like what we do, give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel. It is free. We're going to be with Joe Ledley and Charlie Mulgrew tomorrow night in Musselburgh. If you're in the area, might not come along. It'll be a great night. All that's left for me to say is once again, JP Mason, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.